lovely Lynn Rossy, and I'm such a big fan of her work, and I've read her book, The Mindfulness-Based Eating Solution, and I also attended a 10-week online program called the Eat for Life program, which I use in both a personal and a professional capacity on a daily basis. And her work really changed the way I see our relationship with food and our bodies, and actually just how screwed up it is for most of us, right? So you just wrote another book, Savor Every Bite, Mindful Ways to Eat, Love Your Body, and Live with Joy. And when I saw that it was released, I immediately contacted her and devoured the book once again, because there's so much wisdom and gems in this book. So Lynn has a PhD. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and an author, as you know, and she's also the president of the Center for Mindful Eating. And I know she's always busy with, many different exciting things. So I guess there might be more or something exciting in the pipeline again that I don't know of. So welcome, Lynn. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Zena. It's lovely, really, to be here with you today.
Yes, and I do love reading your books, and Savor Every Bite definitely was no exception. And I think the opening sentence of the book really gives us a good idea of, what you're all about. You say that, when we were born, we were delivered without operating instructions. And somewhere along the way, the most instinctual acts we perform, such as eating and moving our bodies, have become quite complicated and confusing. And, I often think about this. We get taught about geography and math, but we don't learn the basics in life, how to manage a relationship, how to stay mentally healthy, take care of ourselves. And yes, there's no manual on how to feed ourselves and move the body. So how is it that something that is so damn natural got so complex?
How does it get so complicated, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, if you think about it, when we're children, when we're babies, right? So babies know when they want to eat, when they don't want to eat. They know when they've had enough and they stop. And I hear mothers all the time, worried about their children because they're not eating the way that they think they should. And in general, kind of the idea is to let your children guide themselves as much as possible. But, we're such a control freak world, we're going to control everything, and we want to make sure that it's right, and there's the right way and the wrong way, and I've got to get it right, and I've got to be perfect. And that screws us all up, right? Because there's not one way. There's not a right and wrong way. There's not good and bad food. Some food will make us feel better than other food, right? But the body is very forgiving to a large degree. So, I can have a cookie or two, and it's not like I'm not going to eat that for lunch. I'm going to have something that's more nutritious for lunch. But if I have a cookie, it's not a big deal, or a piece of chocolate or whatever. And that's not what I'm going to base most of my nutritional needs on. But it's like we can have a wide variety of foods and it's okay. But as we grow up, and now it's getting younger and younger, we get bombarded with the messages from the diet culture. And that can come through our parents. I can't tell you how many people that I talk to that say that their mother or their father or their, people in their family started to put them on a diet when they're 5, like a calorie restricted diet or something like that. And it just starts to screw up with the system. The minute you go on a diet, your body, your metabolism, your biology changes. Right? So worst thing you can possibly do. And yet our world is filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of diets that people, are told they need to go on. And we're always kind of searching for that magic, that magic key, that's going to solve all of our problems. And then we're going to be, forever young and forever thin and forever this and forever that. And it's just a lie, it's a delusion. And it's this trance that we then begin to live in, which says we need to be a certain way. And it's different than what you are right now. Right? Whatever you are right now is not good enough, and you need to be different, right? That is like at the basis of most of our problems, is that somehow you need to be different. You need to look different. You need to, And it's just not true, right? And so very quickly, as we grow old and we start being conditioned by not just our family and friends, but by TV, movies, social media, social influencers, I mean, whatever, we're taught that we're supposed to have this certain ideal that is just, it's just not based in reality or truth about who we are and what we need to do. And we lose contact with our internal signals. That's why it becomes complicated. Our bodies tell us everything that we need to know. Everything that we need to know about food, for sure. Okay? Because there's this immediate feedback loop. The body is giving us immediate feedback on, okay, I ate something. I feel great. I feel energized. I feel really alive right now because of what I ate. My breakfast was wonderful. You know, I had local blueberries, local yogurt from the cow, you know, the walnuts, they probably weren't local. But anyway, but, you know, I just kind of feel that in my body right now. And it's like, yeah, that kind of sat well, you know. And if I would have eaten, let's say, a donut, sugar, first thing in the morning, not that you can't have it, but I'm just not going to feel as energized for as long as if I'd had the yogurt and blueberries and walnuts. Okay. So once in a while, if you want a donut for breakfast, fine. But on a daily basis, you're going to notice my energy's not good. Now, if that's how you want to live your life, by all means, have the donut every day. But as people practice mindfulness, and I think this is, you know, it's been proven in research that when people practice mindfulness, and mindfulness is about being in the present moment, with your awareness on what's going on, your thoughts, your senses, all of your senses, without judgment and with kindness and compassion, you begin to want to feel good. You begin to want to do things that feel good to the body. We're not reacting to emotions that lead us to overeating or eating more than the body really needs, nearly as much. We begin to move in the direction of greater well-being and health because, you know, we're connected at the heart level to ourselves, and we want to become our own best friends. That's just, for me, I mean, I have to say that's really, I still learn that every day. I mean, I've been practicing mindfulness, oh my gosh, for many, many, many years, and teaching mindful eating for many years. And I still learn things because your body's always changing. You have to stay current with your body. Today, it might want a donut. I don't know. You know, I could check in and go, no, I actually want a donut. Okay, well, great. Have one, you know. Or maybe I just want to give myself a treat, and that's okay. On a general basis, though, I tend to, you know, hear my body saying, hey, you know, this kind of food is going to make you feel better, think better, be able to do all the things you want to do in life. Because I'm a busy girl, you know, I'm doing a lot, as you said, you know, I'm probably doing something else, which I am, you know, and I want the energy to do everything that I want to do in life. And if I listen to my body and we begin to have a kind, compassionate relationship with each other, it works out much better than if I ignore it. Yes. Right. And if I just listen to my head, which is going to say, I just want pleasure all the time. And that pleasure comes in the form of, you know, things that sometimes aren't, you know, to the degree that we do it, aren't going to be supportive.
Yes, exactly. But now something I often hear clients tell me, and I'm sure they tell you the same thing as well, is, but I don't trust my body. I don't trust my body to tell me what it is that it needs.
Of course you don't. Of course most people don't, right? Because they haven't tried, right? They've been so busy listening to other people and trying to trust somebody else that it's a journey. Mm-hmm. And it's scary at first. I mean, I really acknowledge the fear that will come up for people when they've been putting their trust in other things for so many years. But I would ask them, have those things served you well? Yeah. And they wouldn't be talking to me if they had, yes. Right? If the diets had served them well, if the external advice had served them well, then they wouldn't be coming to my mindful eating class and looking for a different way, right? And so it takes time for sure. And it takes a little bit of trust, right? So mindfulness, some of the qualities of mindfulness that we cultivate, and I just wrote a blog about it. I'm going to post it tomorrow. And it's a very simple blog, but it's really just, sometimes I don't know what I'm going to write until I start writing it. I was going to write something completely different. And it's like, this is just what came out, right? And it was going back to just the basics of the qualities of the characteristics of mindfulness, the definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness, Jon Kabat-Zinn gave a definition that's used all the time. It's paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. So let's break that down a little bit. On purpose, right? So there's this intentional component to mindfulness. We have to set an intention that I'm going to really try to be present for my life. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't, we're not present 50 to 90% of the time. This is what the research and my anecdotal, evidence would say. I've asked this question to people for many years. And people are pretty shocked by that information when they first receive it. And they agree, I'm not present, I'm lost in thought, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. And when you do that, you're more depressed and anxious. Mm-hmm. Okay. Living in the present moment requires that you set the intention to practice being in the present moment, because it is not the brain's default. Mm-hmm. It's actually not the brain's default to be in the present moment, which I find fascinating, right? So to get the habit formed of being in the present moment so that you can listen to these signals from your body requires that you practice. And so I always encourage people to start a mindfulness practice, like a daily mindfulness practice where you sit and you pay attention to the breath. The mind wanders, you come back. The mind wanders, you come back. I mean, it's a pretty simple practice, but that's what I always teach people to begin with. There's other practices for sure, but that one is just so simple and so easy because you're always breathing. The breath is always present. And, when you start paying attention, you might take a deeper breath, which I probably need to do right now. But starting to train yourself and set the intention that every day I'm going to practice, even if it's for a few breaths, to train my brain, because the brain is trainable, to be in the present moment, right? So intention, so important. No matter what it is we're doing, is to set that intention that I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to try and become more mindful. Okay, number one. And we skip over that part sometimes. And we go straight to I'm going to be in the present moment. And that's where people kind of start and end sometimes when they're practicing mindfulness. It's just about being in the present moment. And it's so much more than that, right? That's part of it, but it's only a third of it. Intention is a third. Being in the present moment is a third. And then my favorite part is the last third, which are, Jon Kabat-Zinn said, non-judgmentally, we pay attention to the present moment. But I like to say it's with kindness and with compassion and with curiosity. And then there's all of these qualities of patience and trust, accepting, openness, allowing, beginner's mind. All of these things are in the quality of our relationship to the present moment. So it's the present moment, but what is your relationship to the present moment? Are you fighting it? Are you pushing it away? Are you stuffing it down? Are you, all kinds of things we do with the present moment. And mindfulness, this is the key for me. The heart of mindfulness practice is the heart. Plain and simple. And I've learned this more and more over the years because sometimes, at the beginning of my practice in mindfulness, sometimes it would get a little heady. You get so much in your head and we're so used to doing that. And you have to keep dropping down dropping down. I'm a big fan of putting my hands over my heart these days, and just feeling into the heart of the practice, which is, oh my God, I'm here in the present moment. This can be sometimes a scary place. I don't necessarily trust it. How can I drop in deeply and really be present for myself? And most people can be very uncomfortable doing that at first because they're so used to being distracted that stopping and coming into a moment of silence, taking a breath. What does my body feel like right now? I'm feeling satisfied in my belly. That's the first thing that happened when everybody do that right now. Just kind of check in. What does your body feel like right now, right? What are you feeling at the belly? That's a big place for people who are practicing mindful eating. Are you hungry? Are you satisfied? If you've eaten, how is that food settling into the body and being digested? Is it digesting well? Is it reacting to it? Oh, all kinds of things that you can be aware of. Did I eat too much? If I just ate, am I uncomfortable? Should I have eaten a little more? Really discover. And then what else are you feeling in your body? And just feeling the clothing on your skin, right? Feeling the air against your skin where the clothing doesn't lie. Places of tension, places of relaxation. Heat, coolness. We can really explore the body. And then what are you feeling? Right? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you confused? Are you afraid? Are you curious? Knowing what we're feeling is also a really important component of our presence. And then knowing what thoughts are going through our mind, right? We have between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. Now that's scary.
A lot.
And so, knowing what they are, and through mindfulness practice, we know not to pay attention to them that much, right? Because most of them are automatic, they're negative, and they're repetitive. So we can just let those go, and then most people these days have a running to-do list. This is not helpful to pay attention to, right? So it's about really cultivating that ability to drop in, to visit yourself. And the more that you do that and actually listen, the more in tune to those internal messages that you're going to receive. And your body itself is not going to lie to you. Your physical body is not going to lie to you. Your thoughts are going to lie to you, but your physical body is it's telling you, it's giving you information. It's telling you when you're tired. And, it's time to give it rest instead of another cup of coffee, It's telling you when you might need to go for a walk or when you need to stretch or, when you need to connect with someone. There's all kinds of things that your body tells you, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yes. But I guess the thing that comes up for many people if they do that is that they make contact with some difficult emotion, right? And then they feel like something has gone wrong, but you kind of you see it in a different way, and you say that there is no wrong or good or bad emotions. It's just natural, right? So tell us more about that. What should we do if we do quiet down and we are in the present moment, but the emotions are just too overwhelming or, it's almost traumatic? What should we do?
Very good question. And you've read my book, so I would give you a little A there. Yeah. So I have a whole chapter, I have a whole section in my book on this particular topic because it's one that people really struggle with. Mm-hmm. And talk about something that we should have been taught as children, right? This is a skill. Emotional intelligence is a skill that we really should be giving as much attention to as other kinds of intelligence, right? But it doesn't happen, right? And so I get people who are, let's say, 60 years old and they've never been taught how to deal with their emotions. That's criminal, right? When they could have learned this when they were in kindergarten. Starting in kindergarten, it's not too soon to start teaching a child, first of all, that their emotions are natural. right? And there's nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with sadness. There's nothing wrong with disappointment. There's nothing wrong with loneliness. All of these emotions that we're going to have, every single human being has difficult emotions, right? And so mindfulness practice and mindfulness teaches us how to feel the emotions and feel them without reacting. So our first response to a challenge, let's say, might be to react, right? And that's because the body is wired biologically to have the fight, flight, freeze response, right? Threat, respond, or react. Mindfulness gives us a space to stop and breathe. So the first thing to do is to stop and really take a few deep breaths. When you breathe deeply, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. And we can't really process emotions when we're in fight, flight, or freeze. So calming the body in some way is really an important practice. Just getting some space from the situation, stopping and breathing, and then labeling it. I know I did that in that little practice we did earlier, but the ability to label your emotion accurately is one of the most powerful things that you can do to get to feel some buffer or some distance from the emotion and not making the emotion like who I am. I am not anger. There is anger present. I am not loneliness, but there's loneliness present. And those emotions come up based on circumstances in our lives. And so we can honor them. We can acknowledge them. That's the first step, is just to recognize this is anger or this is loneliness. I just had a thing where I do anger. So anger is one of my common reactions to things. It's just the way my personality is made up. And so I can feel that anger, and then that's my signal to stop. Take a deep breath, take a few deep breaths, recognize this is anger. Also just allow it, right? We don't need to push it away. We don't need to stuff it with anything. We don't need to distract ourselves, but just go, yeah, I'm feeling angry right now. Okay. Observe. What are you thinking? What does the body feel like? What are the stories? Because difficult emotions usually bring up stories from our past, right? Something triggers us, and it's not just what's triggering us in the present moment, but anything that's ever been like that is now coming up to say, make it even huger, even larger. Okay, so I can acknowledge all of that. And then after I've had a time to allow that to happen, then I can proceed. So for instance, this situation that just happened to me, there was anger. I felt it. I heard the stories. It has a long history with this particular person, that this might trigger some issues. And I waited. And then I thought, once I felt settled, you kind of let all of this swirl around and you feel it, and it comes up and it goes down, it comes up and it goes down, and you watch the waves. You continue to breathe. You might even talk to somebody about it. I talked to my husband, talked to a friend. And then after it was all said and done, I was down at the heart level, and I decided I don't want to give any energy to this, right? And I don't need to respond in any way at all. There's nothing I need to do but to let it go and move on, right? And so it took this whole, cycle of processing. So then I had my next course of action. Sometimes you'll need to go back and say something, and so every circumstance is going to be different. But really doing all of that within yourself, then it's over. That situation is over. If we don't process the difficult emotions, they keep coming back up. You didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to me. And so if you don't process it, it's still going to be there. So mindfulness, it can be a little weird at first, particularly if people are just starting to practice mindfulness. What they normally experience is all the things that they didn't process. Right? So yeah, the beginning of mindfulness practice can be a little hard in that respect. And that's why I really suggest that people get a teacher. That's why teachers are so important. Teachers that can guide you through that, difficult time as you're starting to practice mindfulness. And I think teachers are just important in general. Somebody who's a little bit ahead of you. That's all a teacher is. Somebody that's already been through what you're going through that can help guide you through that. And in mindfulness practice, just picking up an app or, clicking on a meditation is fine. But if you really start to practice, you're going to have difficulties that you're going to be well served by having a teacher of some kind.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah. I mean, the same thing, you give the same advice in terms of, firstly, being connected with the body. So if you are experiencing the anger, just feel what it feels like to be angry, right? And feel it at the heart and, be connected with it. And what we often do, and I love how you said that, if you don't process it, it's going to come back. What we resist persists, right?
Right.
Exactly. So, and I guess there's this, even with emotions, there's this constant striving for it to be different. We don't want to feel unhappy anymore. I want to be happy. I want to experience peace, and I'm not experiencing peace right now. So I don't like where I am at right now. And that's what causes a lot of the issues. And I mean, the same with being unhappy with your body. I don't like being fat or overweight or ill or suffering from some disease. And that's where that constant striving comes in for wanting to be different from where we are now. And that causes a lot of issues, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was something that I was going to say, but I forgot what it was. Yes, coming down into the body, and you're going to feel all of that. And this struggle with who we are, that's a pattern of thinking, right? So I don't like my body the way it is. I don't like this the way it is. I don't like this relationship the way it is. And so that's where this, what is your relationship to the present moment, comes in. And softening in, really feeling that, because I don't want to just brush that aside, because what you described is extremely painful, right? This desire to be something different than I am is extremely painful. And there's a lot of hurt and discomfort and pain. It's been deeply ingrained in us as people to feel this way, that somehow I'm inherently flawed. And so practicing mindfulness and really just allowing yourself to feel that, but then continuing to practice so that you begin to tap into a deeper truth, right? This is the conditioning. I'm not okay as I am. That conditioning is going to follow you no matter where you go if you don't drop down deeper to a deeper truth about yourself. So even if you lost weight, right, if that's something that you think you need to do in order to be okay, and I talk about that in my book too. I have a whole section on thoughts and how you deal with those. But that's one of the cognitive distortions, is I need to lose weight in order to be okay. That's absolutely not true. You are okay just as you are. And without starting there, no matter what you do, it's never going to be different for you. You're never going to feel okay, right? I don't care if you lost 50 pounds, you're not going to feel okay unless you deal with the cognitive distortion that I'm not okay unless I do blank. So that's the problem, not your weight. Your weight is not the problem. It's not a problem. Your thoughts about your weight are the problem, right? And so seeing the thoughts, being able to recognize that most of our thoughts are just conditioned by the environment around us that we've had since we were little. Let the thoughts go, come back to the heart, come back to breathing, being. And I stress a lot of body gratitude and body appreciation in my classes, because I think we've been in such a fight with our bodies. And for me, the journey back to loving my body after not loving it, or myself, was to really recognize and to appreciate and have gratitude for all of the amazing things that my body does for me every day. Mm-hmm. And as I began to have gratitude for my body and to love all the parts of my body, and even if I didn't fully believe it, I think there's a way of reconditioning our minds, and then the rest follows along, right? It's like, well, I can wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, I took a breath this morning. I'm alive. Wow. I didn't have to do anything to wake my body up. I don't have to think about breathing, my body, my lungs, and my heart's pumping blood, and my eyes are seeing, my mouth tasted those blueberries and yogurt this morning, and I'm very glad that I haven't had COVID and lost my sense of taste. That's like my biggest fear, right?
I know, mine too.
I mean, if I lost my sense of taste, that would be such a disaster, because I love to taste and smell, right? Taste and smell, such beautiful, wonderful senses. And they give us so much pleasure. And so if we can drop down into these simple yet ordinary but extraordinary things that we have in each moment, the ability to hear, the ability to walk from place to place, most of us, the ability to pick up a glass of water and put it to my lips, gosh, there's just so many things that our body can do. And so beginning to really move away from this, the ornamental view of the body, as it's supposed to look a certain way, to the instrumental view of the body, which is everything that the body can do for me and everything the body tells me, and beginning to have this direct relationship with it. Then no matter where you are in terms of how your body looks or whatever, you're going to start treating your body better, right? And when you love your body, when you start to love your body and appreciate your body, you're going to start treating it better. That's it. The first step is to do that, not anything else, but to do that. And as you begin to treat your body in a way that brings greater health to it, and if that's something that you're interested in, which I know a lot of people are, not everybody is. I mean, I want to acknowledge that, and there's this whole idea that health is a moral issue. And I don't say this to be moralistic. Personally, I want to feel energized and healthy and that's just me. And if that isn't, something that you're as concerned about, that's okay too. But as you develop a really loving, kind relationship with yourself, for me, it's like I treat myself better in all ways. I give myself food that helps me feel better. I have relationships with people that make me feel better, and I let go of the ones that don't. I do in my life the things that bring me greater joy. I let go of the things that don't. And so it's a holistic program. Like, you can't separate eating out from everything else that you do, right? Because you're a whole being, and your whole being shows up at the dinner table. And if you've been beating yourself up all day at work and, having people around you that beat you up and, don't treat you well, then when you sit down at the dinner table, you're probably not going to have a very great experience either, right? Because they all kind of go together.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess, being something, it kind of ties in with something I also want to think about, because this is also a response I get very often when I tell people, being with yourself as you are, no judgment, with kindness, with curiosity. For many people, accepting and loving the body as it is, they find that they have a fear around, then they won't be able to get where they want to be. So they'll be stuck, they'll settle forever where they are right now. And you explain in your book that this is not necessarily the case. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, so loving yourself means, so when you love somebody, how do you treat them?
Right. Wow.
You treat them well, right? You do nice things for them. You say nice things for them. When you don't love somebody, how do you treat them?
Terrible.
Yeah, when you criticize yourself, how do you feel?
Bad, terrible. Once again, yeah.
Depleted, right? When you criticize yourself, if you're constantly like, I can't believe you don't look any better than you do, and I can't believe you did that, and you're such a dummy. Why did you do, blah blah blah. I mean, that just criticism makes you feel bad,
Mm-hmm.
and when you feel bad, how do you behave?
Yeah, destructive, probably.
Destructive. I've had plenty of experience with that. So I can tell you from experience that, I was very destructive in my life, when I was younger, because I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't have a sense of self. And I mean, I almost killed myself because of it, in a variety of ways. And then I had, kind of a spiritual awakening of sorts. And I began to learn what it meant to bring kindness to myself, to stop judging myself so much. And as I did that, I began to treat myself better, right? And so I stopped doing the things that were destructing me, and I started building on things that helped me feel better and, have more joy in my life and have more of what I wanted. And the body begins to come into balance, right? There's not one weight that everybody should be. And by the way, all of these, classifications of overweight and obese and all of these are just constructs built by the medical establishment that are useless and they don't define you, right? So we've been defined by the medical institutions in a very destructive way. They put you in a category, and then they've made judgments about you based on that. And weight stigma is more destructive than weight. Weight, it does not necessarily correspond to even health, right? Thin people can be unhealthy and they get ignored because a doctor thinks, oh, well, you're thin, you're healthy. And this just isn't true. And a lot of people that I know that are in the overweight category or obese category that are perfectly healthy, right? So health and weight don't necessarily correspond to one another. And yet we have so many, establishments that try to tell us that. The diet industry wants you to think that because it's selling you products. The medical industry should know better, but apparently they don't. A lot of them don't. And we're trying to do some education with doctors and with that group of people that are healthcare providers to stop doing the things that they're doing, which is if they see you in a certain category, they say, go on a diet. Like, what does that mean? And then people are all confused. And then it's weight stigma. Weight stigma creates the majority of health issues that we face. So it's just really, weight discrimination, weight stigma, this going on a diet, going off a diet, that causes you more problems than anything that you'll ever do, So look at what you've been doing and ask yourself, how's that working for you? And while it's always scary to do something new. It's always scary to do something different. And loving yourself may seem scary, and like accepting yourself just as you are may seem like, oh my gosh, then I'm just going to eat everything I want to. And you know what? You might at first. And that's okay. When the pendulum swings back this way, I don't like myself, I'm going to love myself, I've restricted forever. Now I'm allowing myself, but it can maybe go over to a little, overeating, right? Because anytime you've restricted, you're going to overeat. Anytime you've restricted yourself from anything, you're going to overdo it when it's allowed. So you can expect that as part of the process, right? And I try to address that in my classes with my 3 food wisdoms, which gives you some structure around this allowing of food, maybe for the first time in your life. Because anytime you restrict, you're going to binge. Anytime you restrict, you're going to binge. That's how that works. Binge, restrict cycle. It's very well documented in the literature. So when you stop restricting, mindfulness gives you the skill to lessen the reaction to the permission that you're going to give yourself, right? But because you have to start giving yourself permission to have whatever you want. You have to do that in order to give up the diet mentality. And so there can be a little overdoing before you come back to balance, right? It's just how things work. Restrict, and then come back to balance, right? And so I know it's hard to say, don't worry about it. And I know that you will, but if you're practicing mindfulness is the key. I almost think you have to have a mindfulness practice in order to successfully navigate that pendulum. And so they talk about this in intuitive eating as well, is that there's no forbidden food. And so when I taught the principles from the intuitive eating book, I noticed there was a huge problem with this particular area. And so that's why I developed the 3 food wisdoms, which is give yourself permission to eat anything that you want, but then use mindfulness, second wisdom, use mindfulness to determine what's the amount of that food that I should eat. Because when people say I have permission to eat anything I want, what they hear is I can eat anything I want, as much as I want, whenever I want. And that's not what this is saying, right? You don't throw your brain out. You don't throw your belly out when you do this. I always like to say, how much of a pan of brownies is the right amount of brownie to eat for your body in this moment? Is it the whole pan? And maybe at first you need to eat the whole pan, but gradually you're going to see, I ate the whole pan, and I think I was listening to my head, who's been restricting for a long time, and my body is saying, wow, you really overdid it. So gradually you begin to listen to your belly and your body, which is, a little more conservative about how much it really wants, and it says, a brownie, or even half a brownie, maybe even a bite of brownie is enough. And you've had your brownie, you allow the brownie, and then, you don't have to overdo it. And then the third wisdom, as you're learning this process of giving yourself permission with food, is really to know and respect your patterns and triggers. I just think that there has to be some structure, and not everybody would agree with me, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that. Some people say, bring in all of your forbidden food into your house and have it lying around everywhere in front of you, and good luck. Or that, you have to have that in order to feel like you have full permission. Personally, for me, that's not what I did. It's not what I often encourage other people to do. You can do that if you want to, by all means. I think a kinder, gentler way for at least me was I would bring it in and I would notice, okay, that's not working. Having it at the house and knowing that I'm not completely mindful all the time, that I would unconsciously eat a gallon of ice cream. Okay. I felt like crap, didn't like that. So I'm like, I want my ice cream, but I really don't want to eat that much. But I'm not always mindful. What's a better way I could do this? So I would not bring it home, but I would go, if I wanted ice cream, I'd go down to the ice cream parlor. There's a little great place called Sparky's downtown Columbia. And I'd have a cup of ice cream. And I would stop because I made it an event. I made it, a time set aside to really stop and really enjoy and really savor the food that I hadn't allowed myself or that I had overeaten in the past. So in this way, I'm really training myself to be fully present for the eating experience, because these forbidden foods, we tend to not eat them consciously. We eat them unconsciously. We eat them fast. We don't stop and really savor. We're like, because I shouldn't be eating it, and I'm eating it anyway. And I don't want to have anybody see me eat it. And there's all this stuff that we do. So we want to get out of that. So for me, it was like I can sit in front of Sparky's, I can have my ice cream, and then I can slowly savor it. And it becomes this whole experience that I have shown myself that I can do effectively without sabotaging myself. So give yourself complete permission to eat whatever it is you want. Ask yourself, through mindfulness practice, what is the right amount of this food for my body right now? And that can change every time you sit down and eat. And then what are your patterns and triggers? What are the foods that, when do you get distracted and become mindless around food? When do you which foods are more difficult for you to eat than others in a mindful way, and work with that. Be kind to yourself. Find ways of having it without making it an experience that then you feel like, oh, I can't have to do that again. For me, that doesn't seem helpful, right? So I want to build a little bit of structure for people.
So I mean, it's not just about what the body wants or what the body likes, but also how the body will feel afterwards, right? And I do you find that this is also applies to things in terms of that people should be avoiding with certain disease? What do they do if they're diabetic and they shouldn't have sugar, but they really feel like having sugar? What should they do in a case like that?
Yeah, so I mean that's a complicated question with a complicated answer, but I'll try to simplify it. Let's say that you're a diabetic. You can have a little sugar when you're diabetic. It's not like you can't ever have sugar, right? And so you have to be more careful about how you do it, but you don't have to deny yourself completely, generally speaking, right? And so don't get in the all or nothing kind of thinking with it, which is what people like to do. It's all or nothing, And for people that have a restricted diet, whether that's because they're diabetic or they're celiac or, they have other food allergies, what tends to happen is that people focus on what I can't have. And so again, restrict, binge, restrict, binge. So if you can you will have had experience, I'm sure, that you've had this food that, you're allergic to or isn't good for your body in some way, and you've overdone it and you know how that feels. So I think it's important to remind yourself, when I had that, I really didn't feel all that well. And I suggest that people find things, because there's so much wonderful, incredible food that you can make no matter what diet you're on. I mean, diet in terms of like physical health diet, not restricted calorie diet, that can be delicious and enjoyable. And so it might take a little extra time for these people to really discover, with people that don't have any restrictions, they still have problems too. But the thing is to really spend a little bit of time exploring the world of food and take your focus not on what you can't have, but on what you can have, and making that really pleasurable.
Yes.
Because that's what you're seeking is pleasure. What you think you can't have, you think is the most pleasurable ever. But if we can, it's a mindset. It's stinking thinking, basically. And so we can let that go and go, okay, well, let's focus on this. So there's a concept in Buddhism that I will be writing about next week, but I really, it's what I was going to write about this week, but it didn't happen. But it's about skillful effort, right? And I really love it because it basically says, if something doesn't serve you and isn't skillful and harms you in some way, don't do it. I know that sounds very simple, but boy, is that difficult for people, And if something is supportive to your well-being and is supportive to your health and your happiness and your joy, do more of that. It's so simple, but so people make it so complicated, right? And it's not. It doesn't have to be, right? This right effort thing is just, I love the idea of right effort, because we get so focused on what we can't have, what we can't do, or, these ideas of what we think we need in order to be happy, instead of focusing on, well, you can have this, and this makes you happy. Why don't you go over here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it really is about, even like you say, even if you are diabetic, maybe a bite of the brownie would be okay. And that's where you have to kind of listen and tune in, and what is the right amount. So that's important. Something else I'm thinking about in that category, or, the fact that we have so many addictive foods in the supermarkets nowadays. So on the one hand, your body, or would it then rather be your mind? I don't know, telling you I need potato chips or I need chocolate or whatever it is. And some people have reported, and I also experienced that if I do take only one bite, I want it the next day and the next and the next. So it's almost that addictive cycle. So is that okay? Should we just go with that? What should we do?
Yeah. So I really encourage people to bring those kinds of food into my class, and then we eat them mindfully together. So like people will tell me, I can't just eat a potato chip or 3 potato chips or whatever it is. And I'm like, well, that's, not true. Number one, anybody can just eat 3 potato chips. Not that that's what you need to do or have to do, but we have all these ideas of, I can't just take 1 bite, or I can't just have a little bit. I can't do this. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because like you said, food companies make food, and I don't want to say addicting because there's a lot of controversy about that. But what happens is on some of these highly processed foods is that you take a bite and it's got a big burst of flavor and then the flavor disappears. It's meant to do that. So you want more. Okay. And so there's never going to be a sense of satisfaction with these foods, which is why you keep eating and eating and eating and eating, because they're empty. They're empty of substance. They're empty of the ability to satisfy, because they're not designed to do that. You could eat a whole bag of potato chips and your body's like, well, you didn't really feed me, because it's not got a lot of nutritional value, right? So we have to consider that. But we can enjoy our potato chips. And so, but a lot of these foods also we eat unconsciously. We don't eat mindfully. It's like, I don't want to eat potato chips mindfully. And when you do eat it mindfully, you see why, right? Because I ruin junk food for people all the time. I say, bring it in. Let's eat it mindfully. I never tell anybody don't eat something, right? You can eat anything you want, but I want you to savor it. I want you to pay attention to the taste. I want you to really taste it when you eat it, right? It's the unconscious eating that gets us, triggered and, into this repetitive, eating. Yes. So if you stop and you taste it, what people often discover is that they'll start tasting the things besides that burst of flavor. They'll start tasting the metallic taste in their mouth, or the preservatives, or the colorings, or the chemicals of some kind in their mouth. So one of the people in my last class had a thing with Diet Coke. Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke, Diet Coke. And she said, I just can't quit drinking Diet Coke, and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you don't have to quit drinking it. But she started taking note of the symptoms that she had when she would drink Diet Coke. Now, granted, I didn't know this, but she was drinking 3, mind you, big styrofoam cups from Sonic every day. Wow. And so she was drinking a lot of Diet Coke. So I said, she tried a lot of things like cutting down, doing this and whatever. And I said, when I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke, okay? And because I had a lot of addictive behaviors, and then I was very oral. I don't know, I had this oral fixation kind of, and Diet Coke was just something that I got into. And I went on my first long-term meditation retreat, which was 9 days long, and there wasn't any Diet Coke there. So when I got out, I was like, oh, I'm going to have a Diet Coke. And I had been practicing mindfulness. I was in silence practicing mindfulness for 9 days for the first time. And I came out and I'm like, I'm going to have my Diet Coke. And I was like, And I'm like, oh my God, what is in that? I think I had tasted it for the first time because my taste buds had not been having that bombardment of Diet Coke on my mouth for over a week. And when I had it again, I hated it.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually really didn't like it because my taste buds had just in 9 days had an opportunity to reacclimate, and because we can get kind of acclimated to certain tastes, particularly if we're eating a lot of highly processed food. And so I said, hey, do you want to do an experiment? Totally up to you. Don't drink it for a week. and then come back next week. It was our last class, and bring a Diet Coke with you. And let's see how it tastes. In that week of not having, so she said, yeah, I definitely want to do that. So she didn't have it for a week. And she noticed all of her habit patterns around, I go first thing in the morning, I go to Sonic. At noon, I go to Sonic. On my way home from work, I go to Sonic. And she started getting water instead. She was drinking water. And she said she stopped having shakes. She stopped being hungry at night, right before bed. She started sleeping better. She started thinking better. I mean, she just, through the week, she was listing all of these things that she noticed from not having had the Diet Coke for a week. And she came back and she sat there in class and she had her first few sips of Diet Coke. And she said, it's okay. It's not overly terrible, but she said it's not really all that great. And I just don't think that I really need to do that anymore. And so it was like, for her, it was like just setting it aside for a week and noticing what the benefits were and then tasting it again really helped her overcome this kind of, I need this, because a lot of what we do is habit, right? We get into these habit patterns. Our bodies are set, and habits can be really hard to break. Right. So particularly as fast as we're moving in this culture, in this world, we just go into habit patterns. And so breaking out of those habit patterns really requires mindfulness, really requires stopping, slowing down, paying attention.
And I guess most of the time when people are eating these types of food, they are sitting in front of the television, so they're not really paying attention, or they are, like you mentioned earlier, they are eating it very quickly because they're not supposed to have it, or while the fridge door is open, or while they're standing, and then you're not really tasting it. So that's the key, according to you, to break that cycle. Be mindful, eat anything you want, just be mindful while doing it. And you will be, you're always, you're telling us, in your classes, you've told about many people who realize that the foods that they absolutely love, like you said with the Diet Coke, it's actually really not good. They don't like the foods that they're obsessed about previously. Yes. So, I think, it's such a great way to look at that. And, when something else I'm thinking about is when we are connecting with our bodies, we also need to tune in with hunger signals, right? So we need to, and many people don't even know what it feels like to be hungry. So that's a great starting point to recognize hunger signals. But often the hunger signals are much more obvious compared to when we are satisfied, right? That's often a whisper in terms of when should we stop? When is it enough? And there's a lot of I would say beliefs or stigmas around when we should stop eating, in terms of when the plate is empty, we should not be wasting food. Are there any tips that you can give us in terms of how to know when to stop, or getting in tune with that? Or do you find that everything is under the umbrella of mindfulness? Is it just you need to be more in tune and you need to listen? Is that it?
Well, I think you can see it kind of as an experiment, and bring curiosity to the practice of eating and knowing when to stop. So, I have my basics of mindful eating, which is, breathe and belly check before you eat to see if you're hungry, and then decide what it is you want to eat. Because when you have what you really want, you're going to be satisfied sooner. Assess what it is that you're putting into your body. Slow down, because we all eat too fast, right? Or most of us. 3/4 of us eat too fast. A quarter of us are slow eaters, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're paying attention. And then the I of the basics, because basics is an acronym, the I stands for investigate your hunger throughout the meal. So as you're learning these techniques, or the mindfulness of eating, is to slow down and to really start, paying attention. And I really encourage people to just eat sometimes. So I'm not going to suggest that you're always going to not do anything else while you're eating, but as you're learning mindful eating, to just sit and eat in silence. A couple of meals a week at least, and just begin to tune in and notice when your body begins to feel like it's had enough. and when it begins to feel like it's had too much. And so it's really practice. You have to, like anything you want to get better at, you have to practice it. So it's practice, practice, practice. And, it's trial and error, right? And so, and it can be fun, make it fun. Don't make this like a drudgery, it's like eating is fun. Eating is enjoyable. We want to savor every bite. That's the name of my book, Savor Every Bite. That's what we want to do as much as possible. Otherwise, we're missing out on these pleasant moments that we can have in life. And if you savor every bite and you notice, oh, I'm not really savoring because I don't like this, then why are you eating it? Right? Yeah. So investigate, and then don't judge when to stop eating based on how much food is left on the plate, but when your body is actually satisfied. And chewing thoroughly helps as well, because I talk about how chewing thoroughly helps us to get the nutritional value out of the food, breaks the food down so that you can digest it better. So many good things about chewing. And then savor, right? Savor, savor, savor. And notice if you are savoring, and if you're not, why are you eating it? Yes. There's my basics. That's a quick answer to your question.
Absolutely. Okay, and this is my last question. But often when, we often use food, like we've talked about, to cover up for all types of things going wrong or right in life. So even when we're celebrating, when we're happy, when we're lonely, tired, we tend to eat, or many people tend to eat. And we don't have to be judgmental about it, because I find that it's such a wonderful tool to show us what is missing, to show us, where is life not working for you, where is life not serving you. But we do tend to lose touch with that if we are too busy. And I love the chapter you write about in Savor Every Bite. Oh, yeah, Savor Every Bite. Am I right?
Yeah.
Where you say that, we often, the urgent gets prioritized more than the important, right? And you actually quote Christophe Andre.
Christopher Andre.
Yes,
yeah.
And he says, every day the things that are urgent in our lives come into conflict with those that are important. And he says, if I don't do what's important, nothing will happen to me, at least not immediately, but gradually my life will become drab, sad, or strangely lacking in meaning. How true is this? And so often we just focus on our to-do list, what needs to be done, but then our life lacks meaning, it lacks value and all the important stuff. So can you tell us something more about this, and how do we actually make that shift? Because often we feel like the urgent things, if we don't do them, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to I won't be able to make ends meet. So how do we make that shift?
Yeah, again, we have to be aware of all or nothing thinking. I mean, we have to check our email, once a day at least. And, there's projects at work that we have to accomplish and things like this. But I know we all know how much we constantly are checking email. We're constantly checking Facebook or Instagram. We're constantly checking social media. We're constantly just, distracted. And in that constant distraction, we lose ourselves. We're so outwardly focused. That's why I think it's so important. In order to understand what's important to you, you have to stop and visit yourself every day, right? I do think that that's just the best skill that you can develop, is to stop, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning. And I like to do it in the morning, and I know people do it at different times, but I think in the morning is, for me, it's the best. And so I stop and I take myself to a cushion or to a chair or to my yoga mat, and I tune into myself, and I just stop and I breathe, and I'm just being, right? And so it starts with that, because when you start with this connection with yourself, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning, you're going to be more tuned in to a deeper wisdom about how to lead your life. Mm-hmm. You're going to be more tuned into what feels resonant to me and what doesn't. right? And I'm going to go back to setting intention, right? And spending some time journaling, like write down, do a little meditation and then just settling, just focusing on the breath, and then start writing down what's important to me in my life. What do I value? So many of us are not in touch with this at all. And it's a shame, really. It's another skill that we should have been taught when we were kids. What do I value? What is important to me in my life? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it my career? What aspects of my career? Is it nature? Is it, painting or creating, music, or, what are the things that bring you joy? So I always like to bring in a message of joy. Joy to me is like the ultimate. And it's not like this, crazy, joy necessarily. It can be a quiet joy, but what brings me into resonance, into relationship with myself. And you can begin to touch into that. And it's a continual reevaluation, right? You don't want to just do this once. You want to stay current with yourself, and you want to know, where am I being led? And how can I begin to direct my life in ways that I'm actually getting meaning out of my life? I'm getting more meaning because I'm following the messages that I've been given in those moments of silence. Because I have found that we're busy, distracted, and they stop, and you say nothing, and all of a sudden these messages come from a deeper place than your mind. It comes, I think, from my heart. And it tells me, you would really like to go do this, or here's a solution to this problem. It's in those moments of silence that I just feel like my life is led, to where I want to go, and not down roads that I don't really find all that useful.
Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves the question: how do we want to live? Hey? And what is important to us? And we only have the moments. We only have this moment to check in and see whether we're on track, and whether we want to change anything, or we're allowing the moment to be as it is, right? Without wanting it to be different. The more we can savor it, the more we can appreciate it, and the more we get from life. So, thank you, Lynn. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for your time. But before we end off, maybe you can just tell people where they can find you. We've talked about the books, we've talked about the Eat for Life program. So should they go check out your website? Are you on Instagram? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place is to go to my website at lynnrossy.com. And there is the information about my book, and about my classes, I also teach yoga, and I got that whole thing going on. And I have retreats that I teach, and I hope to be teaching more retreats in the future. That's my new thing that I want to do. Yeah. And then, so here's my book. Yeah. Savor Every Bite. It's pretty marked up on my end. But anyway, but you can go to my website, and there's meditations that go along with the book that I recorded that are specifically for this book. And then I also have meditations from my first book, The Mindfulness-Based Eating Solution. And I have meditations from teaching the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, and yoga. There's videos of yoga on there. And so those are all free. You can go to my multimedia page on my website. You can also sign up for my blog. I had kind of take a little hiatus here recently, but I'm going to be back to writing my blog weekly. And so you can sign up and get weekly, or sometimes every other week, blog about my musings about mindful eating, living, and moving. So
right, love that. Yeah, and thanks for all your years of experience and wisdom that goes into your work. It's really enlightening to be able to have access to it. So thanks for changing a lot of lives out there.